Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim, and welcome to Tim Talks, the show that's only partially a show, but really is just an excuse for me to talk to my very talented friends. And speaking of talented friends, I have another one here with me today. You may know him from anything RT animation related over the last 10 years. Miles Luna, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Tim. Good to see you again.
How are you?
Oh, same soup, different spoon, you know?
Boy, is that a loaded question these days.
Yeah,
That
it
used
is.
to be
But
that
no,
used to be a very easy question to answer.
right? No, things are all good. Considering all the number of catastrophes that have befallen the world and Texas and Austin and all those things, I'm doing peachy. How are you?
Excellent. I'm very glad to hear that. I'm better than I was last week, not as good as I will be next week.
Okay.
We got hit rather hard here at my particular apartment complex. Thankfully, no power outage or anything. I'm right next to a hospital and a fire station, so that makes us
Gotcha.
a part of an important grid, which,
Right.
minor victories there. But our washing machine, the external pipes leading to it completely burst.
Oh, no.
And the whole complex was without water for several days after the rest of the water got turned on because of several burst pipes throughout the 8 buildings here. And they're very slowly working on getting, they got everything turned on, but the washing machines still don't work. They're having to come through and very slowly. So I have a pile of clothes in that closet right over there that's way too large to show on camera, which is why it's in that closet right over there.
Well, thank you, Texas and Governor Abbott and all of our great, great power systems and infrastructure. Yay!
Hey. So, on things a little bit happier here, I've got a note card full of notes here,
Ooh.
basically kind of going over some things I wanted to discuss. But let's give people a bit of a catch up here if they may not know who you are. Where may people know you from?
Sure. So I have worked as a writer and director and voice actor, and kind of jump between those three main pillars for the past 10 years. Most of my work was done while I was an employee at Rooster Teeth Productions here in Austin, Texas. Some of the more notable shows that I've worked on are Red vs. Blue, RWBY, and Camp Camp. And this past year in 2020, I made the move to go to a freelance role. So I'm still getting to work on some of those shows in a like part-time capacity, and the rest of my time has been spent A, surviving, and then B, doing some more voice acting work, as well as looking into learning about writing for the games industry, and also working on some more personal projects and stuff. So it has been, to say it's been a new life experience would be probably the biggest understatement.
So, if you'll excuse the rude question immediately,
please.
how old are you?
I am 30, going to be 31 in April.
So
Towards the end
that
of
means
April.
you joined Rooster Teeth 10 years ago when you were 20 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started interning there. I think 20. So I started doing some like production assistant work before I was an official intern, compiling footage from hard drives, dealing with props and wardrobe, moving sandbags and stuff. Then became an intern primarily to work on Red vs. Blue season 9. And then in between that, they kept me on to, back when we were doing a lot of live action shorts and things, I would help out on that. And, back then, I think I was the 19th employee at that company. And so we wore a lot of hats and worked on a lot of different things. And it was a much scrappier garage band, punk rock kind of time. And so we did a lot of stuff. And then, eventually I was brought on. I worked for the graphic design department for a brief stint there. But then ultimately ended up transitioning into creative for Red vs. Blue. It was a hell of a ride.
Is that where you wanted to kind of land?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I remember one of the higher ups at the company at the time, Yvonne, who's an absolutely extraordinary woman, invited me outside to one of the picnic tables behind the building one afternoon and was like, "Okay, Miles, you have a choice. Do you want to stay in the graphic design department, or would you like to work in writing for Red vs. Blue, because you've been requested by both managers?" And then like I didn't even let her finish. I was like, "Red vs. Blue." I want to work on Red vs. Blue. I love that show.
Yeah. If you've ever wondered why you're here, this is now the reason.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, to borrow a phrase that's very apt in this situation. I think that's really cool that at that time, because I came in around like 2013, right around the time when it went from being the scrappy 40, 50 person operation to the conglomerate that it is now. And I remember that San Albanado office, and it was a very different time at that time. Can you kind of describe like the air of, I guess,
not even, I wouldn't call it early Rooster Teeth, but I guess
like
Ralph Ablanado
Rooster
Rooster Teeth,
Teeth,
66 Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, the rebellious teenage years.
Adolescent RT. I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah, no, it reminded me a lot of like a school club, which sounds strange to say, but when I was at the University of Texas, I didn't do any fraternities or anything like that. Almost all of my spare time was committed to an organization called Texas Student Television, which was a volunteer organization that was part of the College of Communications. And what was really remarkable,
essentially, it was RT Farm League at a certain
kind of, yeah. Brandon, that's where I met Brandon Farmahini, who got me my internship, and then Matt Holum and Bertie Burns met there and worked there during their time at UT. But yeah, it was pretty much, when I was at the University of Texas, I started in the summer of 2008, and it was kind of, you wouldn't really get your hands on any production equipment until you were an upperclassman, typically speaking. But I was hungry and young and wanted to make dumb videos and stuff. And so TSTV was an avenue for that. You could, after going through a handful of hours of training for the different pieces of equipment and studios and whatnot, you could rent out equipment and use it for any one of the shows that the TV station was producing at the time. And so I immediately signed up. I took the classes. I got to a point where I was teaching classes and was a member of the staff there. I became a producer of one of the shows, Video Game Hour Live, where I met a lot of my friends. And yeah, I mean, like, we were there on the weekends, just having fun, capturing gameplay footage, putting together silly reviews, trying to come up with bits. And Rooster Teeth, my early time there, it reminded me a lot of that. We were really ambitious. We were young and wanted to do all the things because in our minds we're like, haha, we've tricked a place into paying us to do what we do for free. And that was like the mindset at the time. It's not a good mindset to have, kids. But that was after going through years of college where you're told, oh, if you get a job in entertainment, do whatever you can. It's almost impossible. Everybody has to go out to LA to do it. You get into this mindset of like, consider yourself lucky and like, yeah, to an extent, but also consider your value and that you're good at your job and that this place could be lucky to have you.
Right. That it is a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yes. I'd like to take the time to make that important note. But yeah, no, so many of my friends, worked at Rooster Teeth, and when we weren't working, we were hanging out at each other's apartments playing video games or board games and whatnot. And the place was a lot smaller. It was essentially like what felt like just 4 big rooms, and then eventually an additional small space across the parking lot. And those days,
old bungalow.
Yeah, in those days we would take breaks and go skateboarding in the parking lot and like go out and all get lunch together. And it was a lot of work, but again, we were really young and we were really hungry for that kind of stuff. And so even though it was pretty intense, at that time we were having a lot of fun doing it, and we were happy to do it. And it was.
I'd almost call it like a film boot camp at a certain point.
A little bit.
You're learning a lot of skills that some of which you might have come in there with, some of which you definitely did not. But you leave there with a much wider range of skills than you would have had at a place that lets you specialize.
Right. Yeah.
I think, which has its benefits, but also definitely drains you a lot more.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. But yeah, it was a really wild time, and I'm glad that I was able to be a part of that moment in time with that group of people. It was a really wonderful experience.
Now take us back just a little bit further to say a Baby Miles. Did Baby Miles play a lot of video games? Was he always interested in this sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. I was not lucky enough to be a Nintendo household, but we did have the Sega Genesis. That was the first console that we got. And then I did eventually get a Game Boy, which was awesome. My first game was Wario Land on the Game Boy. And that's why Wario will forever be my disgusting, terrible man who I love from Nintendo.
I get it. He's the only person to pick in Mario Kart. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So, yeah, always a big fan of video games. I don't know if it has anything to do with my ADHD or what, but it was a very like immediately engaging form of entertainment. A lot of blippy bloopy fun sounds and bright colors, and like it wasn't a passive experience. There was always a goal.
No,
there
it's
was a
very
sense
active.
of like, yeah, there was a sense of accomplishment and achieving things. I mean, nowadays that kind of stuff is baked in all sorts of games where possible. Like, the Call of Duty little X hit reticle, and the fact that you get points for everything is like all that is there to reinforce like you're doing things. Trust us.
The big feedback loop, like letting you know that you're doing something. I mean, that's why you're seeing Fitbits get gamified, and all of these other companies trying to figure out how to include that kind of instant neural response and an endorphin rush of accomplishing a thing, even though it's a digital thing that means bubkiss.
Right, exactly.
You feel like you did something that day because the watch told you so.
So I've always played games. That was a constant pastime, was going over to a friend's house or having a friend over and playing Mario Kart or Mortal Kombat or something like that. It was a fun social experience because I was never particularly athletic. I mean, I was in the Boy Scouts for a very long time, and so there's a lot of hiking and things like that. But like competitive sports, I played them, but I did not enjoy them that much. I found them kind of like repetitive, and obviously it's hard. You have to be in good shape to, keep running up and down a basketball court. And so there was something, it was like a form of play that wasn't only easier, but it was also a form of play that was heightened. It makes me think of like, there's bowling, and then there's night bowling when they turn on all the black lights and lasers and play music. And that was video games to me. It's like, yeah, I'll play basketball. That's fine. Or I could play NBA Jam where the ball catches on fire and the crowd cheers whenever you make a shot. And it's just like, yeah, why would I not want to do this? And
you could play Madden, or you could play NFL Blitz, where you literally get to elbow drop the dude after you picked him up and body slammed him into the ground.
You can dogpile. I'm
right there with you.
You can dogpile the other players after the play's already ended. Yeah, exactly.
I'm right there. Also, by the way, if anybody wants to make night basketball with a UV basketball that like lights itself on fire after you shoot a 3-point shot or 3 shots in a row in general, that would be amazing.
I'd show up for
Just
that. Yeah,
throwing that out there. Yeah, but for real though. And it's funny you bring up bowling because that is kind of a very apropos sport, especially for me. Like, I'm terrible at it. I'm having the best day if I get over 100. But I have so much fun doing it. It doesn't matter at all. It's one of the things I most have fun at, being terrible. And I think there's something to that, being okay with being bad at a thing, but still having fun doing it.
Oh, that's an amazing trait to have. I've started playing in this past year when it's hard to hang out with people in a safe way. Some friends and I have gotten into disc golf, of all things.
Oh yeah.
Because moderately speaking, disc golf is an activity that you can do in a safe, socially distanced manner. You're outside. You can keep your party small. You can keep distance and stuff like that. And so we started playing disc golf, and I was horrible at disc golf. But I still had a good time because you walk around, you can bring a beer with you, and the dog can be with you, and you can just kind of chat. And eventually, I did get better. I'm still not great, but I've gotten a lot better at the game. But it was one of those things where, I'd be on like triple bogey, and I'd get my disc out of the basket and still go, that's great. Let's go move on to the next shot.
Yeah. Next one. Doesn't matter anymore. You already passed this one. This one's done now.
Yeah.
So, what was the process like getting involved, getting roped into RWB? You were talking about how Yvonne sat you down and kind of mentioned that both managers wanted you to go different directions. But once you actually signed on to RWB and took over this 10-year flagship series, I mean, that had to have been a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah, I was horrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was excited, but that excitement was quickly overshadowed by, oh my gosh, what if I screw it up? So many
You
people
actually
are
have to
going
do
hate
it
me.
now.
Yeah,
You got the
exactly.
job. Yay. Now you got to do the job.
It was interesting. I the reason I even found myself in that position in the first place was because we had a contract with Microsoft at the time where every handful of months we would need to deliver an exclusive miniseries for the service Halo Waypoint, which is no longer a thing, mainly because Red versus Blue was like the only driving video content on that platform.
Yep.
But hey, points for trying, right?
Exactly.
And so at the time, everybody was very busy. Bernie would normally write of the miniseries, but there was a million things going on. And so I just wrote a script and then offered it up as tribute, and Bernie liked it, and then asked me to finish out the remaining 2 scripts for that miniseries. I did it. He let me. It was honestly like the best case scenario because we knew not a lot of people would probably watch the Halo Waypoint series at the time. There was less risk in allowing the new guy to take a stab at directing it and writing it and stuff. And obviously, Matt and Bernie were doing oversight on scripts and giving me feedback and punch ups and like, hey, this character's line could be better and stuff like that. And so I kind of learned from working on RWB 9, then working on that. Also the years that I just watched the show on my own and kind of learning the voices of characters and the kind of pace at which it moved.
Real quick, when did you start watching the show?
So the first episode I saw was the season 3 episode where Sergeant Caboose are stuck in Beaver Creek. It was the first episode I ever saw. And this is back when you had to like download the videos.
Yeah, so, on like DivX player.
Yeah, I'm guessing this must have been, gosh, well, if it's season 3 and the show started in 2003, maybe 2006. I don't know. But I was a teenager and I watched it, and for some reason I didn't comprehend that it was part of an ongoing series, because specifically that episode is more of a commentary on multiplayer Xbox lobbies at the time. And so I just thought it was kind of this funny joke at that, and I watched it, thought it was great, never thought about it again until I got to college, where I made a friend living at the same dorm as me who asked if I'd ever watched Red vs. Blue because he knew I was a fan of the Halo franchise. And I was like, Red vs. That sounds familiar. And he shows me this box set. I'm like, oh my God, this is a show. Like, can I borrow that? And I just burned through the first 5 seasons in a week. And then after that, I was like, oh, I'm going to I got to find this roosterteeth.com thing and see whenever they put out a new season or anything like that. I can't remember. I can't remember when they started season 6, but I do remember watching week to week. Definitely by the time season 8 had come around, I was watching week to week and, had my mind blown when they incorporated 3D animation and stuff. But
oh my God.
But yeah, as far as taking over, we were doing like a Game of Thrones night at Bernie's house one evening, and he just kind of floated the question, hey, would you like to take over the show and be the writer and director? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I remember being very surprised because I thought season 10 was the end. Just like how I thought season 8 was the end, and was surprised when I heard they were working on season 9. And that
puts you back to that amazing website, isrvbstillgoing.com.
Exactly. So I remember the first steps were kind of, taking a look at where things ended in season 10 and what Halo 4 had to offer. Halo 4 was a relatively new game at the time. We were going into pre-production on season 11. And the first thing that you kind of have to do with a machinima series like that is you need to look at what weapons and sets and vehicles and armor classes you are going to have at your disposal, because those are your props and things that you have to work with. Like every multiplayer map, that's a set you have. There's a reason why the Chorus trilogy starts leaning more and more into an alien storyline about alien technology. It's because a lot of the maps had alien technology just inherently built into the geometry. And so there's no getting around that. And at that point, you need to look at your limitations and use those as jumping off points.
Right.
That was something Bernie told me really early on, because I asked him, I was like, what would be something you recommend? And he's like, we'll take a look at what you have to work with. He said, I remember looking at Blood Gulch and seeing that the rocket launcher spawned in the middle of the map and going, why is that? Is there something funny? Like, why is there just a rocket launcher out here? I think in the first episode, it's like, why are there two bases in the middle of this box canyon? Like,
What can
this,
you do with the circumstances that you have?
right?
Because that's so intrinsically built into the atmosphere of the show that if like yes, there are certain elements that you can computer generate, certain movements of the characters that you can do and get away with at certain points for wow factor, but like if you don't return to the base at a certain point, the base being two characters who are being controlled by fucking controllers and moving like this on a background that is genuinely recognizable as a set from the game, you're getting too far away.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it's just being aware of what you can and can't do, and then obviously those boundaries can be pushed when you get a larger budget, and therefore then can add like computer animation, we started doing. Obviously, it had been done before, but in terms of when I was running the show, season 12 was when we first started getting to do animation, but we only really had like one animator for the first half of the season and then two for the second half. Like, it just because suddenly you can do 3D animation doesn't mean you can do everything. There's always going to be a budget and time and things that you need to consider. But
was season 12 the anthology season?
That was 14. 12 was the middle of the chorus trilogy. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And so, it was taking a look at, what Halo 4 had to offer. I remember there was a lot of panic because the Mark V Halo helmet was not in the game at that point in time. We actually had a lot of talks with 343 and Microsoft about like, are you guys planning to put this helmet in? Can we do something with it?
I need to know.
I think if I recall right, that was like a whole plot point in season 11. Oh my God, it's been so long, but I'm pretty sure part of the plot is Wash builds Caboose his old helmet, I think.
Yeah.
And because we didn't have it at the start of the season, but we were told, hey, don't worry, it's coming.
It's coming.
Excuse me. And then also, looking at where 10 left off, the final scene is in a box canyon, but it wasn't, Blood Gulch, and there's a sense of closure, but we don't really talk about where we are. And like, there's some suspension of disbelief because the big thing at the end of that season was we were going to show a scene in Halo 4 before Halo 4 had hit the streets.
Had really hit.
That was exciting, and the audience kind of understands they're working with an early build. They, the visors might look a little weird, and it was more of just like hey, this is kind of cool. But then I had to look at
what we're getting into now.
Right. I had to look at it from a point of, okay, well, what is this place? And okay, we know that they were going home at the end of season 10. Okay, what if the story is they crashed? And then, okay, well, where's church in Carolina? And all this stuff. And so, it's really just kind of like, I think the first step is just taking stock in what you have at your disposal, what you have at your disposal, what you're capable of doing with that, how far can you push what you have, and can you use any of those limitations to your advantage and whatnot.
Interesting. Yeah. And I imagine that those are just challenges that went on throughout all the seasons you worked on RWB, but you had another big egg come out, a beautiful baby that you birthed with the help of Carrie and Monty, RWBY.
Yes.
And how did that come about?
I mean, one night Monty and Carrie just walked up and were like, hey, do you want to go get dinner? And then they started saying, do you want to work on an anime? Like, I knew that Monty was starting to work on the Red trailer as he was starting to roll off of production on Red vs. Blue season 10. I didn't know too much about it because he and I were in just like physically different parts of the building at the time. And so I was upstairs with all the Xboxes and he was in essentially the hangar garage with his bajillion monitors. And I remember they had very loose ideas of a bunch of different directions the show could have gone in. I mean, some of the stuff that we were first talking about was just like unrecognizable to what RWBY is now. The main core, though, that never changed was there's these four girls who are color coded and inspired by these fairy tale characters, and they fight monsters. Like, that was essentially the core concept. And there was ideas of like, I think they go, we think they go to a school, and I think there's 4 schools. And from there, like, that was kind of the starting point. They had some ideas about, different timelines and a bunch of wild stuff. And we just kind of kept ping-ponging ideas back and forth while Monty kept chugging away at the Red trailer, which, wasn't heavily reliant on having the entire story and world fleshed out. The Red trailer being more of a teaser of the kind of action people could expect, the look of the show, and like just kind of like the energy of the show.
God, I remember when that Red trailer came out.
It was wild.
It was amazing. I had never seen anything like that before. It was amazing.
It was, we had no idea what we were in store for.
Seriously.
But yeah, no, it was so much fun. It was a different kind of writing challenge than Red versus Blue, because Red versus Blue, yes, there were a lot of longtime viewers, and because the show had been going for so long, there were expectations of what RVB should be, of what it could become, of what the character sounded like. And yes, those are rules that you have to adhere to and can sometimes be frustrating if you're like, oh, I wish this character wasn't this way, but this is how they've been written for so long. And so like, this is who that character is, or like, this is a plot point that happened that can't be changed. Like, you just have to accept that those are the rules, and that's how you're going to have to play this game.
Right.
However, what's nice about that is you have rules. You know what you can and can't do, and you know the sandbox you've been given and how to, it's up to you how you play with the toys inside that sandbox, but that sandbox still has boundaries and walls and rules.
That was actually going to be something I touched on later. I'm glad you're bringing it up now. The difference between playing with somebody else's toys versus literally having to build your own toys, and then playing with them.
I don't know which I prefer. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But I think writing, for me personally, writing in somebody else's world, and of course it depends on the world, but generally speaking, is easier for me, because I can just if I just absorb enough of the content, I can produce something close enough to where if I can get some guidance from someone else, maybe to tweak this and that, like I can hone that and go, okay, this is how this goes. Right. When it comes to creating something wholesale from nothing, the freedom can sometimes be a bit paralyzing, because you start to think like, is this the right decision? I was working on this show over here and I didn't like a rule that had been created before I showed up, but that's the rules. It's not my fault it's not my problem. I just have to play by these rules. Now, if I come up with a rule that later on down the road, I wish that rule didn't exist, like I only have myself to blame. Like, one example that we always go back to is like, gosh, we hate the fact that we gave Faunus, the kind of animal hybrid race of people in RWBY. We canonically said that Faunus tend to have only one animal trait. So like, you might have cat ears or a cat tail, but not both. God, we hate that rule. Like, every day we're just like, why did we do that? And because we didn't really have the foresight at the time to see like how annoying that could be. Because at the time we were really trying to create rules. We were trying to build our sandbox and trying to say like, okay, these are things that we want to limit. These are things that we want to be able to do, and what we think that maybe we should not allow ourselves to do. Power creep was a big thing we wanted to try and be aware of, and like not introduce characters in the first season who can already do, immense damage. Like, they can be strong, but there needs to be things about them that, they're not great at, or this, that, and the other. And so, it can be really scary when you're going like, is this the right decision? Like, do I want to commit to this idea? And I think sometimes you're just going to have to accept that nothing's ever going to be perfect. And you'll probably get to a point, if you're working on a show that was a success, and then down the line you're going to go like, I wish we'd done this differently. I think that's just always going to happen if you're continuing to learn and grow. Just because, you're always going to be, hopefully you're always going to be smarter today than you were last week.
Right. And you're always going to be trying to push yourself in different choices, in different avenues that you may not have wanted to do a week ago. Yeah. But trying to push yourself outside of that comfort zone is what makes you grow as a creator, as somebody who is expected to take in the world and then put it out in some sort of observational pattern. Mm-hmm. Like you need to be able to internalize the things that are happening around, and then spit it back out in a story format that people can connect with and understand. And doing that with your own toys adds an extra layer of difficulty on top of that, because then you have to take all of these rules that you've made and all of these guidelines that you've set out, and then you have to vault that over the gate of making it connect with people. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's especially difficult and especially brave of you to decide to do back. This would have been what, 2014?
2013, I think.
13. An all-female led show on the internet doing exactly that. You know, like I think that now, today, people kind of, oh yeah, no, of course it's an all-female led show. But at the time, it was a huge freaking deal.
What's funny is that, like, at the time, it wasn't a big deal to Carrie Monte and myself, because we were like, well, anime does this all the time and it's rad, and like, I think, you know, like Katara and Sokka are awesome characters, and I don't think too often about how they're women. But then it starts to then sort of become like, it does matter. I remember us saying, because we got asked this, because we didn't really think it was that big of a deal, but we got asked it in interviews all the time, like, oh wow, you know, like, what made you want to do this? And, you know, a lot of the time our response would be like, well, we don't really think of them as girls first, we think of them as kids first.
Right.
And like, you know, that's all we ever really think about. And that is kind of what I mean, that's true. We often just thought of them as kids first, and then like, oh yeah, I guess they're also female, and that's notable. But in a way, you don't want to say like nobody says like, oh, I don't see color. Like, that's not the right way to approach that, because you should see color when it comes to race. You should see, you know, that there are some races that are treated differently than others and things like that. And yeah, now with hindsight, I look back at that answer and I go like, it is noteworthy that it was an all female cast, and obviously we did not have like much in the way of resources and budget and staff back then. But I think nowadays, like if we were pitching RWBY now, I would definitely not feel comfortable working on that show without you know, a female perspective in the writers' room. And it's interesting. Like there was also a period of time where, like, you know, voice acting, having race of the actor matching race of the character, to me did not seem necessary. Like I was like, you know, Phil Lamar is the voice of Samurai Jack, like, and that's fine. And there's, you know, I can't remember the guy, but a dude plays Linda Belcher in Bob's Burgers, and I remember thinking, so long as you can do the performance, it shouldn't matter what your race is. And you know, my belief on that has changed as well. It's, you know, I think it is important to, if you're going to have, you know, an Indian character, that you should try to cast, or at least definitely make an effort to cast a person of Indian descent for that role. And it's just, I think societally, we're also, you know, I'm a very privileged individual in which, you know, I'm Hispanic, but I'm definitely white passing, and therefore very rarely experience any sort of discrimination from any number of directions. And so, yeah, to me, it's like, oh yeah, this isn't really something I think we need to think about. Like, I think it's whatever, but, you know, I'm not the, you know, Aziz Ansari had a great bit about this in his show Master of None. It's like, you know, I don't ever have to worry about, you know, is my culture being appropriately represented, or being given the opportunity to represent itself in media. And I've gone off on a long tangent because I just had a bunch of coffee. The point of all of this is to say, it's crazy that RWBY was a success, and I'm glad people connected with it, and I'm glad that people have enjoyed it. And I am happy to see that every year the show grows in so many ways, not just from like a technical animation standpoint, not just from a writing standpoint, but also just from a you know, a self-aware standpoint, a way of trying to be more inclusive when we can, and trying to learn from our mistakes, and always just trying to do better. And hats off to all the people on the team working on that show that are always just trying to find ways to improve, even if sometimes that's just like our own internal, or Rooster Teeth's own internal, you know, work hierarchy or structure or pipeline, always looking for ways to do things better and to be better. And I think that's cool.
RWBY and the entire RWBY, by extension, are some of my favorite things that have come out of that company. I think that the fact that you guys were able to create something from nothing, was a first for Rooster Teeth. You know, yeah, they did a lot of live action stuff, but as far as animation goes, that was kind of a first. And it was the first something that you guys created from nothing that really just exploded in popularity and has gone all over the world. You know, and that's probably insane. Like when you guys got the announcement that it was going to be airing in Japan and that like there was going to be one of the first imported things from the West, like that's got to be a pretty big badge of honor.
Oh yeah, it was also. I mean, it's just yeah. That whole situation was just wild and incredibly humbling, and I still don't understand how it happened. Like I don't know if you can. I don't know if a show can have imposter syndrome, but like I just remember being like me and all of us were just like Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World, just like we're not worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. To be
it was
recognized
wild
by the masters in that way, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know. Yeah, RWBY was kind of the first original, you know, wholly original animated property that Rooster Teeth really got off the ground, and I often wish that the one that hit big was the second one we had made because of, you know, it was the first time, you know, me, Carrie, and Monty were, you know, not extraordinarily experienced when it came to writing.
Right.
And so we made a lot of early mistakes back then, and God, I would do so many things differently if we were able to start all over again. And so, yeah, I always think it's funny that like our first rough draft attempt, it would have been great if maybe that was like a 3-season run. And then we got to take everything we learned from that and do the next project. And here we are X many years later in the middle of volume 8.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that when we had the pleasure of getting to meet a lot of people from the anime industry in Japan, I think the thing that they said that stuck with me the most was they were like, is your show perfect? No, absolutely not. There's no such thing as a perfect show. And yeah, your show has a lot of rough edges. You know, yeah, maybe your animation isn't always the smoothest and your writing isn't always the sharpest. But they were like, the thing that your show has that we can all see is passion and heart and a love for this medium. And they said, you know, anime, they admitted that sometimes, and I'm not going to say who this was because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there were some very important people from some shows that I also consider very important. But they said, you know, the production of anime.
Hang on just one second, Miles.
Oh, sure.
Just happened here. My camera seems to have turned off.
What they said that they did see in our show was that the show had a lot of heart and a lot of passion. That, you know, we very obviously had a great love for this form of storytelling and the way it had been done, you know, in years prior, and things that we thought that we could do differently, you know, i.e. the way that we use 3D and, you know, camera movements and things like that, things that Monty was absolutely exceptional at. Right. And I remember feeling so undeserving of that compliment, but so humbled. You know, they tried to explain that, you know, I can't name names because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there were some big names attached to some big shows, and they said that in the East that anime production had started to kind of feel formulaic and kind of equated it to working in a factory where you just had to kind of crank it out as fast as possible, find the new manga that they think will be popular and try and hit that and hopefully make enough money to continue on and drive up sales and all this stuff. And
gee, that sounds like YouTube SEO.
I mean, welcome to late stage capitalism, folks.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think, yeah, I still can't fully believe how big of a hit RWBY ended up being, and you know, for all of its flaws and ways in which it can still grow, I appreciate everybody who watches it and enjoys it and is able to share that enjoyment with friends and family and stuff.
I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me when I first saw RWBY as a whole was just how much heart there is in that show. Like it's a love letter to all of anime. You know what I mean? And there are only a couple of shows that I've found that like make me feel that way. And that puts it up there with like Food Wars and Yakuza Like a Dragon. You know, things that are homages to the things that came before it. And really kind of pay service, due diligence, and also take their own route within that genre are just so rare and so cool. WandaVision right now is doing that, I think, in a very big bad way, where they're taking TV as a meta idea and breaking it down. And spoilers, it's fucking great.
Oh yeah, it's really remarkable. I had a rough start with it. I still stand by this opinion, and I know a lot of people disagree. I still feel like that show should just start on episode 2. But everybody has ways in which they feel about television and art and whatnot, and I can't say I went from being supportive but personally skeptical of my own enjoyment of that show to openly crying at the latest episode that came out. So
yeah, it's very good. I'm looking forward to the finale this week, and without saying too much more for people who haven't seen it yet,
really wonderful show.
It's going to be amazing to see how they connect all these pieces together. I have every trust in Feigeverse now because, like, holy crap, if they're able to take something so completely outlandish as what WandaVision was framed as in the beginning and turn it into what it is now, they know what they're doing, and I have no qualms. Like, there's nothing I can say that's going to be any valid criticism that they could use to make it better than it already is. So all I'm going to say is great fucking job.
Great show.
Anyway, so talking about things that have heart, I remember very distinctly the creation of Camp Camp. I remember you taking me over to your desk and playing me the version of the theme song, and instantly from that moment, it was my new favorite show from RT Animation. Talk about things being made with heart and bringing kids' stories to the forefront. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the culmination of both of those ideas. How does something like Camp Camp come about?
Well, kind of like with Red versus Blue, it came from a lot of limitations. We were given a directive. It was the first show I spearheaded as the new head writer of the animation department, and our directive was to create a new comedy series that was more episodic in nature. At that time, our two biggest animated properties, Red vs. Blue and RWBY, were very serialized. You had to watch every episode in order to know everything that was going on in the story. And Red vs. Blue were now in double-digit seasons at that point, and RWBY
is getting there.
We saw that it was going to be a show that you had to watch everything, and we were especially aware of it when we made the jump from Poser to Maya in our animation software. The visual quality of the series improved a lot. And so we knew we would be facing difficulty trying to sell people on a show if they saw like a trailer for the latest episode and then they go to watch season 1 and season 1 looks almost nothing like the current season of RWBY, and how we might lose viewers because of that. So big directive was create a new show that pretty much you could jump in on any episode and enjoy it. You wouldn't need to watch previous episodes. And we kind of did that. I've always been more of a fan of like the narrative complex storytelling in which you can enjoy an episode on its own, but longtime viewers will be rewarded by subtle character arcs throughout the series. Right. And so, and now that I'm looking back on it, Camp Camp did in a way get a little more, not plot heavy, but there would definitely be episodes now that if you watch them out of order, you'd be a little confused. But we had a very limited time frame to come up with a new series, and we took pitches from all over the company and brainstormed a bunch. And I just remember one day walking in and thinking, you know what, I'm going to pitch a show about summer camp, because as I mentioned earlier, I was a Boy Scout and was in it all the way through the rank of Eagle and 2 Palms. So I was in it for a long time. And it was something I was very familiar with. And, they say, write what you know. And in those circumstances, I was like, well, I know this really well, and we need something now. And so I just wrote Camp Camp up on the whiteboard that day. And everyone was like, I'm intrigued by the title, go on. And I said, well, I have this idea about a summer camp that is multiple summer camps all under one roof, and it's a bit hectic. And Jordan Swears and I were both big fans of the idea. Gray and Carrie were also part of the development, but were, I think at the time, very busy with RWBY stuff. And so myself and Jordan Swears, and as well as Patrick Rodriguez, spent a lot of time together in those early days. Patrick would kind of just listen to us talk. He was, I think, our art director at the time, and
I love
just
Pat.
kind of sketched. Oh, Patrick Rodriguez is one of the most talented people I've ever met, and is also just a wonderful human being in general. But yeah, we would bounce ideas back and forth, and Pat would kind of draw while we spoke. And I remember one of our directives was, come up with what. It was such an absurd directive. It was come up with the new Homer Simpson, and we're just like, okay, what does that mean? And the heart of that note was come up with what is today's everyman. It was Fred Flintstone, that was Homer Simpson. Like, what is today's everyman? And we were like, someone kind of jaded and probably a little tired, and doesn't have a lot of faith in the systems that they've been told they should have faith in. And I remember at first we were like, oh yeah, of course, it'll be a really burnt out camp counselor and a bunch of like annoying kids. And then one day we went, well, hold on, that seems kind of obvious. What if instead we make a 10-year-old child a jaded asshole, and we make the adult figure almost more childlike in comparison? And once that idea like escaped our mouths, I think that's when the show really started to gain momentum. Of this,
it's funny. As soon as you say that, like, I can almost hear the sparks flying in the room.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It was because it first just started with come up with this kind of format of show and this kind of character, and once we figured out what the setting was and which character that was going to be, that was when the most important part, in my opinion, came to fruition, which was, what is this show about? It wasn't about summer camp. That was the setting. The show was about idealism versus cynicism, and these two philosophies personified through a cynical child and a naive, optimistic camp counselor. And once that was understood, everything else started falling into place. And things were falling into place really up to the last minute. I mean, we were, again, under a really pretty intense time crunch. And I remember we were already in the middle of writing episodes for season 1, and we still hadn't really quite figured out the character of Nerf, who was our bully character. We knew we wanted a big bully character, but like that was it. We just had this one note, like, and there's a bully character. And it wasn't until I think it might have been Jordan who kind of cracked that egg. But I honestly can't remember these days. But this idea of a bully character who's aware of the fact that they're a bully with behavioral problems and is verbose enough to discuss those problems, but still a child and not able to take his own knowledge and then apply it to his own situation and grow from it. He could only tell other people, this is my problem, fix me. And that, I remember, we figured that out very late in the writing process for season 1, and then went back and did punch-ups for Nerf and all the scripts that had already been written. But yeah, Camp Camp, I think, I obviously have a ton of love and respect for every series that I've been able to be a part of, but I'd be lying if I said, Camp Camp wasn't my favorite, just because it came from a very personal and heartfelt place. And, I love anime, but I didn't really watch anime often until I was older. I grew up with Western animation, and so that was the kind of show I wanted to make from a very, very young age. Obviously, I didn't want to have like a bunch of swearing and stuff. That came later, but a show that looked like that and kind of had the rhythm of that show was something that I'd always wanted to be a part of. And then the fact that I got to be a part of an anime and a Western animated series comedy like that, I've just was very, very fortunate. And just so much fun to work on those shows.
I can imagine so. But, my camera seems to have broken again.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know. It happens.
Okay.
But I didn't want to interrupt your amazing story, so the audience just got a nice view of me static for a couple of minutes.
Oh, fun.
You gotta love that. But yeah, so we're gonna take care of this issue and once and for all. And when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, I will be able to be seen, and that's gonna be great. So again, I apologize for the technical interruptions to both my guest and to the audience. Let's figure this out once and for all.
Okey-doke.
Let's see how long it lasts this time. Again, my apologies to everybody, all around. So, getting all that was a nice little wrap up of Camp Camp. I didn't want to interrupt you there because it's such a wonderful story.
Oh, thank you.
So, getting on now with current projects. You said that you are no longer with the company and striking out to write video games. What's going on there?
Oh man, yeah. Well, I kind of hit a point. I'd been at the company for about 10 years, and I also happened to turn 30 last year, and just kind of hit this moment where I wanted to do some different things. I knew that I could still have the opportunity to continue to work on projects at Rooster Teeth, but the kind of projects I could see down the line weren't ones that I necessarily wanted to commit X many more years of my limited lifespan to. And so I was like, okay, I want to kind of just take a risk and do something different.
A decade is a long time, dude.
Yeah, I was there for a minute, quickly, so I felt okay in that decision. And so, video games have always been a great passion of mine. I think their storytelling capacity is just something we've barely scratched the surface of. Even games that don't have a traditionally strong quote-unquote narrative can still have an extraordinarily profound impact on a player emotionally. Games, just off the top of my head, like Ape Out. Ape Out is a wonderful and very cool looking and sounding indie game about a gorilla breaking out of captivity.
It's Devolver, right?
I believe they're the publisher on that. Yeah. I think. But that is a game that I am just like, every time I play that, like my heart is racing and I want to break free and not be held behind chains. And it's just like, there's nothing is telling me to feel these. I am just feeling them just through the inherent gameplay that I'm engaging with. And I think there's something
jazz punky music that's playing in the
it's very cool. Yeah. There's a percussion jazz soundtrack that is one-to-one mapped with the actions that you take in that game. But
such a cool idea. Such a cool idea that I don't think enough games kind of take advantage of. Yeah.
And so to me, where we're at right now in games as a medium reminds me very much of like early cinema, where people are just now figuring out, like, back then a director goes, oh, if I cut from one location and then cut to another location, the audience is actually smart enough to know, okay, some time has passed and now we're here and it's just later with these people. And like, that wasn't something that everyone inherently knew when stories started to be told with film. Like,
right.
This was something that people had to experiment with and discover. And, this Hollywood way in which great blockbusters are presented today has not always been the way stories have been told with film. And even today, it's still not the way stories are told. Boy, howdy, can you go down some roads with French and German cinematography from the past. And it's just like, it's so bizarre. Even you can look at something as recent as the Wachowski sisters' Speed Racer and go like, oh, these two were trying to really push the boundaries of what it means to tell a story through film. And so that to me is where we're at right now with games. Obviously, games have been able to tell profoundly emotional and moving stories in a number of different ways, but we're still figuring out ways to do it better or more effectively or differently in a way that will surprise you. And golly, there's just something about that is so exciting. I just feel drawn to that. It's like a thing that I want to just get my hands on and go like, okay, well, what if we did this? Like, can we make the player feel this way by doing this or that way by doing that? And just the psychology of game design is so cool. I think one of my favorite examples that I give when I try to explain to someone like how you can convey emotion in a game is I always imagine in a horror game. So in a horror game, let's say that you've been maneuvering through a spooky environment, and then you discover a revolver, and you pick up the revolver, and as soon as you pick it up, you see a little ammo counter in the corner that says 2 out of 6 rounds. Now, in picking up this revolver, so many things have happened or potentially can happen on a subconscious level. On the one hand, you go, oh, I guess I'm going to have to fight things in this game. Now, different players might react to this differently. Some players might go, cool, I get to fight things. Other players who maybe don't like combat in their games or don't consider themselves very good at it will go, oh no, I have to fight things in this game.
God,
and
why?
so like some people might see getting a revolver as a good thing. Other people might see it as a bad thing. Well, let's say in a survival horror game, we want the player to be in a state of stress or worry. And so we want to kind of try and discourage the player from feeling good right now. In this particular example, a way in which you can do that is through that ammo counter. You see I have 2 out of 6 bullets. Now, objectively speaking, you are 2 bullets and 1 gun stronger than you were just a few seconds ago. However, because you're aware of the fact that you could have 6 bullets and you only have 2, and you don't see any other bullets in your immediate vicinity, that could actually have the opposite effect and make you feel less equipped. Because now you have a gun, you know you will be fighting things, but you're 4 bullets short of where you would like to be at 6. And so even in growing more powerful, you can press upon the player a feeling of being at a disadvantage. And that's something that, you know, a lot of survival horror games oftentimes will create a sense of always being on your back foot and not being very strong through like resource management and sparse resources.
Right.
And
That's how
like
you
that.
create dread.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you put that gun that's got 2 bullets left at the base of somebody who was clearly trying to fight off the zombies and might have killed 1 or 2 of them, but still died in the process. There's 2 bullets left in that gun because he fired 4 of them.
Right.
And you can see that this gun that might help you isn't gonna save you.
And that touches on another aspect of storytelling in games, which is environmental storytelling. Like, like you don't give the player 4, you give the player 2 plus 2. And so they see like, okay, I open this room, there's a blood stain and a gun on the floor, and you see that you know, the window or like the vent is broken, and you can piece together like, okay, there's something hostile here. Maybe it came through the vent because the door was locked until I got here. Oh my God.
Right.
Like, I love that. That is so fun.
Yeah.
And so
RE2,
like,
I think, was one of the first that kind of like really toyed with that.
Yeah.
With like the introduction of the liquor scene. Oh my God.
And like even going back to like Metroid games, I think a lot of Metroid style games had to tell their story through the environment. And yeah, I guess all of this is just to say there is no one way to tell a story, no matter which medium you're choosing to operate in. But right now, the fact that games are so young in the grand scheme of things, there's a much greater sense of like we're embarking on a journey into the Wild West of storytelling here. And we know some things, but we don't know everything. And yeah, there's just something about that's very enticing to me, and I don't know if the next project that I'm a part of will be a game. Obviously, that's what I'm interested in at the moment, but I'm always going to have a love for animation and linear forms of narrative. I'm currently working on a pitch deck for a show idea that I had a month ago, and I've been doing research on that, and maybe that will get picked up before I get to work on a games job, or maybe that will never get picked up, and who knows. But I've really tried to use this past year as a time to just sort of like unclench a little bit and take some time for myself after 10 tough years, fun years but tough years at Rooster Teeth. But then also just try to use this as an opportunity to learn new things. No knowledge is ever going to be wasted, and things that I learn about writing for games may be able to be applied to future cartoons that I work on, and of course vice versa. Things that I've learned writing for animation would absolutely be worthwhile when it comes to writing stories for games. And so it's been a really fun past few months of kind of looking at what it is I want to be a part of and pursuing and learning about these different things. And the fact that I've been able to do that has really been a blessing. And it's also been kind of mandatory given the pandemic this past year. Everybody kind of had to pause and reassess some things. And so I guess if ever there were a time to be doing that,
now
could have been a worse time. Yeah.
Yeah, really. All right, you. Oh my God. You're gonna kill me.
What happened?
It died again.
Oh no.
Okay, this nightmare interview is just about over, I swear. Not nightmare because of the guest. You have been amazing, Miles.
Thanks,
and I want to thank you so much for your endless patience and willingness to work with me as we've been going through today. But we have now finally come to the point in the show where, for those who may be familiar with Inside the Actor Studio and how they ended on a Proust personality style questionnaire, we too have a reappropriated version of said questionnaire. And Miles, it goes a little something like this.
All right.
What's your favorite word?
Fuck.
Excellent.
It's because it's all of it. It's a noun. It's a verb. It's an adjective.
Yeah.
It's all of it. It's the Swiss Army knife of words.
What is your least favorite word?
Ooh. Oh, you know what? It's probably I'm gonna say like some sort of financial term, like I'm gonna say, hold on. You know what? Hold on. Let's go with now I'm the one. Hold on. I want to get this.
Yeah.
In trying to do all of my taxes and whatnot, you often just come across. Oh, okay. You know what? I'm not a fan of the word. Oh, there's so many. Let's go with. I can't choose. There's a lot of words that I hate. Oh, yeah, let's go with dividend. I don't like that word. That word just sounds like it shows up in like a gray suit and expects you to be miserable. I don't like the word dividend.
I understand.
I appreciate you allowing me to take my sweet time with that one.
Well, so part of this is actually about kind of the thinking process for this. So the analysis paralysis portion of the show is just as showing as if you have an answer straight away and ready, like your favorite word. So some of them will be a little tougher than others.
I think also, just to cheat, I think maybe a tie for my favorite word is color, because I think everybody thinks of their favorite color when they hear the word color, which means it's different for everybody, which I think is cool.
That's true. That's very true. What sound or noise do you love?
Ooh, I really like the sound of gravel underneath your boots.
What sound do you hate?
Styrofoam rubbing against itself.
Ooh.
Yeah, because you also imagine all the little, like, if styrofoam breaks, then the little particles get everywhere and they cling to everything, and
It's the worst. It's the worst. When we were working over in stage 2 on some of the props and stuff, you literally just be cutting into these giant sections of foam and you would come out. I mean, like the pictures you see of cats that get tossed into foam peanuts. You're just covered. Just completely covered. Head to toe. What hero or heroine do you identify with the most?
Oh, man. Identify with the most. I'm trying to think of a hero that goofs up a lot, because I identify with that. I mean,
you definitely play one already.
It's true. Maybe that's why it comes so naturally. But yeah, no, I think there's relatability and understanding and failure, and then getting up and trying it again. In that regard, I guess I really like. I really love. Oh, dude, I love Captain America. I absolutely adore Captain America. He's my favorite Avenger, and as cheesy as it is, I love Captain America: The First Avenger. Of just like I could do this all day. Like this, I love that
That's
he's just
one
kind
of
of a
my
dork.
favorite lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's what makes him and Superman kind of uniquely different in the superhero universe, in that they're both just so innocently good that it does make them kind of a dork.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like, the more that people can lean into that aspect of the character, I think the more of them shines through.
Yeah. I love
In the
him.
most recent iteration, Superman and Lois is coming on CW right now. There's a wonderful scene where Superman stops a green car, a la Action
Oh,
Comics
yeah.
#1, and then he goes up to this kid, and this kid's like, "Hey, nice costume," and he's like, "Thanks, my mom made it for me."
Yeah.
And then he just flies off, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's Superman.
That's great.
That's Superman," and it's awesome. Yeah. What villain?
I love, ooh man, I really like to, because now my brain is in Marvel mode. I really enjoy Loki. I think you kind of understand why he is the way he is, but he also just relishes in his mischief. Loki's a lot of fun, and then
There is some delight in there, isn't there?
and to a similar point, I know like everybody loves him, but I mean, gosh, Mark Hamill's Joker is phenomenal. You love to hate him, and you can't help but laugh when he does something terrible. Like, yeah, the Joker is just the epitome of chaos and love of chaos. And yeah, no, I think the Joker is really fun, and the different takes that people have taken on that character is really interesting.
I agree. What would be your superpower?
Oh man, I've thought about this a lot. So my superpower, if I could have a superpower, would be to absorb the knowledge of others, like through contacts. Like if I shake your hand, if you know how to play guitar, then I know how to play guitar just as well as you do.
Ooh.
Here's my reasoning. If you choose something like flight or like crazy inhuman strength or laser eyes, that's how you end up on a government watch list. That's how they see you flying on a satellite. Suddenly, the government's going to come after you. You're now property of the United States. They're going to come to your friends, your family. You'll never have a life. Your secret identity won't matter. There's cameras everywhere. They can track your cell phone. Like, that's what I think of it. Is like get yourself a superpower that you can hide.
Yeah. Human Torch is never going to be able to just kind of pass.
No,
really.
No,
The
not
thing,
really.
the thing is screwed.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I know exactly
Yeah.
what you mean.
Look what happened to poor Bruce Banner.
Poor Bruce Banner. He can never find a good pair of pants.
Exactly. Never.
What would be your super weakness?
Pizza. Just
Yeah,
like
I get it.
Like, yeah, I can't pass up a za, man. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop. And is there pineapple on that? Hell yeah, I'm here for that.
Fair enough. No judgments here. Everybody is allowed to make mistakes. What turns you on creatively? What gets your wheels turning?
Watching and playing other stuff. Just like seeing the creations of others and like the unique ideas that they come up with and going like, oh, that's really neat. Like I just started watching The Expanse on Amazon, which was a sci-fi show that was then purchased by Amazon. And there's a really wonderful world building choice, which is, this is a story about you enter in the middle of a Cold War between Earth and Mars being a planet that has been colonized by Earthlings. And then there's also in the asteroid belt, there's those known as Belters. But primarily it's a Cold War between Earth and Mars. And something I realized after watching the latest episode, we're still very early on into it, but Martians have a lot of disdain for Earthlings because on Mars, from what I know from the show so far, like they didn't necessarily terraform Mars. There's still a lot of like having to live under domes and like areas with oxygen and all this stuff. And so every square inch of Mars, none of that is taken for granted. You have to fight hard just to be able to survive on Mars. But on Earth, air is natural, a blue sky is natural, an ocean is natural, and yet Earthlings have paved over it and exploited the natural resources and abused it and look up to the stars and just want more. And so there's a sort of Martians view Earthlings as very selfish. And of course they do, because nothing they have can be taken for granted on Mars because of how hostile the natural environment is there.
Because none of that is inaccurate.
Yeah, and it's something that I found really remarkable I can't help but feel that like the writer of the novels this show is based off of like asked that question of like, what would living on a Mars like that do to your view, your worldview, and like how you look at other people, and it's like, oh my god, yeah, absolutely, it makes perfect sense. And I just found that to be very inspiring. Like, I really like good world building, and that I think is that show has extraordinarily good world building.
I think that's completely fair. What would be your, or excuse me, I'm sorry, what turns you off? Lost my own place in the list there.
And I'm working on the same thing for a long period of time. Absolutely. I get really tired. It was really difficult jumping back and forth between multiple shows early on in my career, but in a way it did help me, because whenever I would get tired of comical space marines, I could switch over to sincere and earnest girls that fight monsters. And like that, like I need to mix it up every now and then. Otherwise I get bored.
Yeah. What was your idea of pure happiness?
Food. I think it not only does it give life, but it is it can be experienced in so many ways, and everybody has, you know, a type of meal that is extremely like it's able to just touch your heart and fill you with warmth, and I think that's remarkable.
What was your idea of total misery?
Apathy. I think apathy is the worst. And you know, this is, I might be showing my privilege here in that I've never suffered I've suffered loss. Everybody suffers loss, but it's not like I've lost my entire family or something. And so I may not know what I'm talking about, but in my experience, I think apathy, the fact when you feel nothing is a miserable state of existence, and is one that I think people run into more often than they realize, and it can be hard to realize when you're there, and I think that makes it dangerous.
That's very fair. That's very fair. What would you be if you couldn't be yourself?
A dog. Yeah, I think like a husky, as I love the way that they just scream howl. I think that's hilarious.
Oh my god,
yeah,
Huskies
I'd be a
are
loud,
the most
obnoxious
high
husky.
maintenance dogs in existence, but they're so cool. They're so great. I mean, it's good that they are that cute, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get away with some of the shenanigans that they pull. That's
Right.
for sure. Just based on some of the videos that I've seen.
Yeah.
What are you afraid of?
The dark. I don't like the dark. I think there's a reason why everyone has a bit of a primal fear of the dark, because it's tied to the unknown and what could be lurking beyond, and I have a very overactive imagination that likes to imagine scary things in the dark.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. Do you have any weird habits?
I bite my fingernails, which is a terrible habit that I've done all my life. I constantly like click my wrists and digits, which I'm sure is annoying and probably not great. And when I am bored, will sometimes absentmindedly just make like beatboxy mouth sounds. It's weird.
Would you care to give us a taste?
Just stuff like that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good right there. Picture your dream home.
Okay.
Take a minute.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I mean, on a lake somewhere. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, built into like the side of a hill. Not like a richy rich kind of up on the hill thing, but like where you enter and it looks like a one-story house, and then you realize that there's like a deck down and some stairs down to the water line. Yeah.
Excellent. And our last question here today, if you had a choice, how long would it take you to respawn after you died?
Depends what's happening during the respawn period. I think that depends entirely. Do I get to look at things or experience other things, or is it just like a waiting period? I think it all depends.
Yes, I agree. And to answer your question with another question, like all of that is up to the answerer. So I'll say the fact that you're thinking about all of those things is probably a sign that all of those will be taken care of.
I mean, if it's just a KD spread, then go ahead and get me back in there pretty quick so I can start playing again.
But if there's like nuclear winter happening, maybe let's wait 1,000 years and then we'll come back.
True.
Yeah. Just have some fun in ghost mode, being able to no clip through
there you
things.
go. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, no clip mode in real life would be
That's
the
just
best
ghosts.
worst.
That's just called being
worst.
a ghost.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that about wraps us out here for today. I didn't even get a chance to talk to you about your endless podcasts and shows over at RT. Fan service and backwards compatible. Shout out to those two. Go and check out those episodes previous if you want to see more of Miles in his, we'll say, more genuine form, more human form. Yeah. And where can people find you these days, Miles?
Oh man, I have the worst, most pretentious username on pretty much all platforms. It's at the Miles Luna. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Cameo, pretty much wherever people lurk on the internet these days.
And you're doing a lot of gaming streaming over on Twitch, yeah?
A little bit. I was doing it when for a while I was streaming myself writing a D&D campaign, but then some other work opportunity stuff came up, and so my creative outlet turned into work. And so I haven't done it in a while. I do want to get back to it because I'd love to finish up that campaign with my friends.
You're telling me. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm really glad to hear that you are still out there having fun and still keeping those tools sharp. And I think that's what this personal content creation is really good for that, for just keeping your skills sharp and keeping you on the path that you want to go down. I hear that you're going to be at GalaxyCon.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing GalaxyCon Live has been a thing that's been happening a lot these past few months. I think I'm there on the Saturday the 20th, March 20th, that is, 2021. Doing a big like RWBY Q&A that is free. And then if you are so inclined for a fee, they have like one-on-one chat things and autographs and stuff like that. But free Q&A, pretty cool. And you can check that out at galaxycon.com for more info.
Excellent. Well, Twitter handles have been under him twice now this episode, so you should be able to find him very easily. Thank you all so much for watching. You've been watching this on youtube.com/, now Tim and Dylon Show. It used to be just myself to explain to you, but now I have joined with Dylon. And
awesome.
This is now a partner channel, so it is now at Tim and Dylon instead of youtube.com/Tim.
Very exciting.
So now I'm having to get used to saying different things. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
Once your tongue gets in one mode, you actually have to like take a second
Exactly.
to break out of the habit.
Well, thanks for having me, Tim. It was nice getting to see you again.
You're very welcome. I hope you had fun, because I certainly did, even though there was a whole bunch of tech stuff going on and things going wrong and cameras overheating and stuff. I still had an absolute blast hanging out with you today. And please feel free to come back on anytime you've got anything in the pipe, anything in the works. I can't wait to see what is next for one of my favorite creators in the last decade.
Thank you so much,
if I may be so frank.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Same Tim and Dylon time, same Tim and Dylon channel. Bye-bye.